はい。よろしくお願いします。I'm Koju. This is the live stream from Daishu-in West. I don't need these. Welcome. I've been gone for a week. I went to Homa to attend the transmission ceremony that Haruda Roshi had there for Daichi and Sozui. It was really nice experience. It's a beautiful island. It's a beautiful temple they have there, and I got to meet a bunch of people that I would otherwise not get a chance to talk to. So it was a great experience. It was a really cool thing to do. I so rarely get to go out and do stuff like that. And I got back kind of late last Sunday, so no, I wasn't able to get online or attend tea here in our Sunday Zazen Gaya Daishu-in West. So please excuse my absence. Yeah, I don't suppose I need to go into it anymore online. I don't really think that anybody likely to see this online knows Daijo or any of the older guard at Sogenji who did know Daijo. I got to meet and talk to, which was a nice experience. And additionally, I had never met Haruda Roshi before, so that was a good thing to do. Hi. And I managed to get a copy of this new book by Yuho-san, Thomas Kirchner. This is Dahui's letters, which, if you're familiar with, there's a series of letters. He's a 12th century Rinzai monk who his nokoteiru preserved works are a bunch of letters that he wrote to lay people, instructions for practice and pointers and things to help them out. They would write to him, and he responded. So this is a very interesting thing, and as usual, Yuho has his way of translating is both evocative and accurate. Like it's he tries, as far as I can tell, not being anything of a translator myself, he tries, to very hard to not only look at the words and translate the words accurately, but also translate the point that the person is using the words to evoke. Those are different things. You use words to create an impression on who you're talking to, right? So if you're talking to one person, you might use different words than if you're talking to another person. And people get hooked up on this, all the time. They're like, but the words, the words were this. And it's like, well, those words were for those people at that time. They're not necessarily for you. It's a different thing. But anyway, and we don't know about that, of course. So all we can really do, or in this case, Yuho-san, all Yuho-san can really do, is look at the words. And I think there's a fine balance between being faithful to the meaning of the word, because obviously they used a particular word for a particular reason. But also, that has to be tempered, that literalness has to be tempered with insight into the meaning of what they're trying to communicate. Anyway, so, a bunch of Dahui's letters. And in this case, we have a letter he wrote to, the first letter to Military Affairs Commissioner Hu. So this is to a Chinese official. Most of them, I believe, are written to officials, kind of in the civil service in the Chinese government in various stations. And a lot of these people were the people that were practicing Chan, Zen meditation at the time. So here he kind of sets the stage a little bit. I'd like to share this with you. He says, "Thank you for your letter. You say that from childhood you have had faith in the way, but that in your later years, hindered by discriminatory thought, you have yet to experience the slightest awakening. From dawn to dusk you desire to know how to embody the way. Having recognized your deep sincerity, I will not refrain from presenting my views in order to best guide you in accordance with your appeal. So, yeah, you're not. I'm not enlightened. What should I do? And he goes on. Your desire to experience awakening is itself the discriminatory thought that hinders you in the way. Apart from this, what other discriminatory thought is there that obstructs you? Ultimately, though, what is it that you call discriminatory thought? Where does such thought come from? Who is it that is being obstructed? Your statement reflects three confused views. The first is for you yourself to say that you are obstructed by discriminatory thought. Who is obstructed by discriminatory thought? The second is for you yourself to regard yourself as not yet awakened, thereby accepting an identity as a deluded being. The third is for you yourself to wait expectantly in this deluded state for awakening. These three confused views are none other than the root of samsara. And he goes on, much in the vein of Master Robaku and Rinzai, where he says, at this very moment, just cease to entertain thought, putting an end to the confused mind. From moment to moment, there's nothing else but to avoid giving rise to the seeking mind. I think this is a fundamental pointer here. Because it shows, like it demonstrates, he breaks down sort of what I often, kind of refer to as the fundamental misconception, or or kind of original mistake. I am not yet enlightened, or there's something lacking. Like I don't have what I need, or whatever it is. And this guy, he says, I've had great faith, but I have not yet had the slightest awakening. What should I do? And he writes a letter to Daishu, and Daishu says these things. Well, already in that initial statement, the first assumption, there's already these three things. He lists these three things. These three. It's loaded. It's loaded with these presuppositions. That there is an I, and that I is not yet it's not yet possessed of a quality called awakening, which is in contrast to a quality of unawakenedness or deludedness. How can that be? He goes on in the letter to say, and I think, he says, how can the mind, I forget exactly how it is, he says, how can the mind that knows, that sees discriminatory thought, how can that be deluded? How can that be lacking? Like that very mind that gives rise to these ideas of, I am a being, I am deluded. That very mind itself, how can that mind be obstructed? Sure, okay, maybe we have these thoughts that we don't like, the thought of being a certain thing, or, not being a certain thing, or whatever it is. These thoughts come up, fine. But that mind which has those thoughts, how can that mind be obstructed? Who is that? It's another way of saying the same thing. Who is that gives rise to those thoughts? Gives rise to those thoughts of unobstructedness, or obstructedness, or whatever it is. Those discriminatory thoughts that arise. Who gives rise to those? Where do they come from? Where do they arise, and where do they go? Just another way of saying the same thing. And this is the fundamental thing. There's all kinds of different approaches. There's all kinds of different methods and things. But if we do not first inquire into the nature of the one who knows, and it's just another fancy way of saying look at yourself, really. Look at who it is that says I am. Who is that? There is, everything stems from there, because the original mistake, the original confusion, comes from this idea of I am this thing that is deluded. So in order to get clear about anything, naturally we need to start with the, well, what is the nature of the one who knows? Who is the perceiver, or where is this perceiving happening? Whichever way the question resonates with each of us particularly, because we all have particular karmic orientations, I say. We all kind of have our own particular charge. And so different ways will resonate with each of us differently. But, and he says it in this letter too, and of course Master Obako and Master Rinzai said the same thing as well. The solution is always the same. Simply stop to give rise to discriminatory thought. Which is the mind does its thing, right? But seeing that those thoughts are empty, that those arisings have no reality, means we do not get caught up with them. It's not like the wind stops blowing or the sun stops coming up in the morning and going down in the evening. It's not like the mind doesn't give rise to anything. That's what the mind does. It thinks about stuff. But when we see that those things that arise and pass away have no reality, then we are not caught by them, and that is what is called not giving rise to discriminatory thought. Things, they still arise. Thought still arises. But it has no mass. It has no lasting reality. It doesn't yank us around hither and thither. That just means here and there. It doesn't pull us around achikochi. And then at that place, with that way of seeing, where can there be any problem? Then things just simply are how they are, right? So I love this. It's really a cool book. I'm so happy I got a chance to read it. Because it just breaks down, it's just simple, just simple pointers for people, and their really simple problems. It's not, it's very pragmatic, very practical. I am not yet enlightened. Well, who are you? Who is, just the idea of not being enlightened is already like way out. You're already making a mistake. You're already, and making a mistake just means you're adding on to what already is. You're just already creating a problem where there isn't one. But where does that happen? Who does that? And then from there it just sort of compounds. Once we make an initial mistake, then because we're operating on like a castle, we're building a castle in the sky already. We've already got the foundation built, and we construct, towers and rooms and, beautiful and fantastic and terrible things, and live out a little fantasy on that mistaken foundation. And so I love how he gets a letter, thank you for your letter, and he just sort of, he pricks the balloon, right away. It's pretty cool. Hi, okay. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to do a sesshin this week. I'm experimenting with doing longer sesshin, so we're starting a sesshin on Sunday evening, and we're going to go through next Sunday. So I'll be back, of course, next Sunday, having just finished sesshin. We're going to start in a few hours this evening, and but as always, if you need to get in touch, you can send an email to the contact at Daishu-in-West.org, and it will come to me. I may not respond very promptly, but it will come to me. So any questions or contact for the temple, please go ahead and yonaku, without restraint, please. Right? Yeah. よろしくお願いします。